Good morning, I'm Stuart Smith and I'm calling today from my apartment in Berlin. And this morning a sort of idea burst suddenly came into my head, which was around the topic of regenerative design, how we could perhaps formulate a project that would show that as a concept for the future. We all experience having lots of devices in our homes that break down and malfunction after a certain amount of time, and then not really knowing what to do with them. I switched on my coffee machine yesterday and it didn't want to work. And if this doesn't work, I'm going to have to go straight out and buy a new coffee machine, and then I won't know what to do with the old one. And it will just become another piece of equipment on a scrap heap. And we kind of miss those people who can fix things and repair things and recycle them and give them back to you refreshed and new. When I started working on building design around the topic of sustainability, it was almost entirely focused on the energy consumed in building in operation. With materials and embodied carbon, we're perhaps 10 to 15 years behind. Everything we do takes resources from the planet, and I couldn't see a way of changing that model. I kept the thought in my mind for a very long time, 30 years, until I then discovered the concept of the circular economy and how we could potentially use and reuse materials. What really motivated me was to be able to not take virgin materials from the planet, because there was a clear understanding that it was a finite resource. Nobody was talking about construction materials as being particularly rare or difficult to find. Who would have thought that sand would become a finite resource, that we would have that awareness within such a short period of time? I understood the carbon impact of our materials, which today has become the big driver to make a big change. But actually there's a whole bunch of other issues around materials and the way we use them, which create a new way of thinking, a new way of designing, and therefore lots of opportunity. One of the things I really like about the circular economy is that it can create employment and jobs and opportunities for people that aren't based on extraction of resources, they're based on reuse of resources. So the guy that is going to fix my coffee machine, if I find that guy, then I can provide some employment. That's another aspect that's really exciting. In 2014 we built the Wiki House, 2015 we built a house for London, and 2016 for the London Design Festival, the circular building. They all became connected. The first one was the Wiki House, which was an open source design, the idea that you could download and make your own house. We took that forwards into a project called A House for London, which was all about studying how much space you would need, which also then became a key part of our consideration when we did the circular building. And the idea then that space could be very flexible, be used for different uses. The mindset is there to try and embed this into projects. In terms of what's actually appearing in projects, it's significantly less because we're still trying to work with the same business models. What I think would really make a difference is if we could have the business case and the business model that added value to materials in a building. So if a building could be seen as a series of materials that have value and continue to have value into the future, then that becomes an asset that appreciates and doesn't deteriorate. I imagine a future where buildings perhaps aren't demolished or destroyed, they might be adjusted or changed, or they might be dismantled and reused elsewhere, and therefore would have some value. The materials would have value, the buildings would have more value. We are definitely seeing an opportunity to use what we've got to a greater extent. We've got cities and mayors that are really supporting this with initiatives and incentives. I feel like that's approaching. And a lot of these things get dealt with not just at the building scale, but at the industry scale as well. So the conversation with all of the major materials, that conversation has started to get onto an exponential curve. Whilst we've undoubtedly done a lot of damage, we also have the capacity to do a lot of repair and regeneration. Regenerative design is our future.